Imagine the phone sits on the nightstand, and every time it vibrates, there is a split second where you don't know if you're about to receive a heart emoji or a paragraph that will ruin your next 3 days. You've become an expert at a very specific, very exhausting kind of weather forecasting. You can tell by the way they set their keys down or the specific cadence of a text message whether you need to be small or funny or silent just to keep the evening from collapsing. It's a quiet internal negotiation you perform a dozen times a day, usually before you've even had your coffee. To someone watching from across the street, this looks like a choice. They might use words like weak or ask why you don't have more self respect. But those words are too heavy and too simple. They assume you are standing in a room with an open door and choosing to stay in the heat. They don't see that the heat has become the room. What looks like a lack of will is actually a highly sophisticated, deeply ingrained pattern of survival. You aren't staying because you're broken, you're staying because you've become a master of endurance, and society doesn't have a beautiful word for that kind of exhaustion. We call these connections toxic, a word that has become so common it's almost lost its teeth. But when you're inside one, it doesn't feel like a poison, it feels like a paradox. It is an ongoing cycle where the person who causes the most pain is also the only person who seems capable of providing the relief. It's less like a bad romance and more like a psychological trap that most people don't realize they've walked into until the walls have already finished moving. There is a reason your brain won't let you just walk away, and it isn't because you're a martyr, it's chemistry. When a relationship is consistently good, your brain eventually levels out. But when love is inconsistent, when a week of cold silence is followed by a sudden, overwhelming "I'm sorry," or a night that feels like the beginning again, your brain gets a massive flood of dopamine and oxytocin. This is what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that keeps people at slot machines. You aren't addicted to the pain, you're addicted to the relief that follows the pain. The honeymoon phase becomes the hit of oxygen that makes you forget you were just underwater. For many of us, the wiring for this was installed a long time ago. If you grew up in a house where love was something you had to earn through silence, perfection, or being the easy one, then chaos feels a lot like home. You might have learned that affection and anxiety are two sides of the same coin. Inconsistency isn't a red flag to your nervous system, it's a familiar language. You learned early on that you are your own safe place, but only if you can manage the emotions of everyone else around you first. This isn't a character defect. It was a strategy that kept you safe when you were small, and your brain simply hasn't received the memo that the war is over. It is important to say, plainly and without any weight, that staying doesn't make you a failure, any more than leaving makes you a hero. Different nervous systems adapt in different ways. Some of us are built to flee, and some of us are built to endure until the very last ember goes out. Neither side is winning a medal. If you are still there, it is because your mind is trying to protect you from the one thing it fears more than the pain, the void of being alone. For some, loneliness doesn't just feel like being by yourself, it feels like disappearing entirely. There is a layer to this that we rarely talk about, a quiet cost that goes beyond the arguments. The hardest thing to lose isn't the person, it's the version of them you created so you could survive them. You are holding onto a potential version of them that acts as a shield against the reality of who they are right now. This is the maybe they'll change trap, a state of cognitive dissonance where you hold two truths that cannot both be real. You stay because you're grieving a future that hasn't happened yet, and you feel that if you just love them a little harder or explain your hurt one more time, the person they were at the beginning will finally come back to stay. But you should know that you aren't broken. The way you feel makes perfect sense given what your heart has been through. You have spent years being a mirror for someone else's chaos, and it is natural that you've forgotten what your own face looks like. Healing isn't about a sudden explosion of strength. It's about the first quiet moment where you stop trying to fix the unfixable and just breathe. It's the realization that peace isn't supposed to be something you earn, it's something you deserve simply because you exist. If this felt like looking into a mirror you weren't quite ready for, there are more ways to look at how we get caught in these loops. There is more to the story of why we choose the hearts we do.